Well, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Thursday night, the 24th of January 2019. Moving right along. Still haven't seen a 1-inch snowfall in my neck of the woods since back on November 15th. So we are working on 46, 24. That's 70 days since the last time that the snow has fallen in and around my area. Other areas nearby, west and north of New York City, that has not been the case. But for the coast, for a lot of the coastal areas, it certainly has been. It's just that kind of year. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. It's just it happens sometimes. And we are going to take a look at the short and the long range. We're going to do the short range first because we had a rather interesting rainfall day today, 2+ inches in a lot of places, and we're going to move forward from there and dry out. And the good thing is that even though it is turning colder, we see temperatures that have dropped into the 30s in a lot of areas. The cold air is not coming in, at least from what I'm seeing. The cold air doesn't seem to be coming in fast enough, nor is it going to be turning dramatically colder like it did last Sunday when the rains stopped and the temperatures basically went from the 40s to the single digits in a short period of time, and the icing with that was fairly minimal. So I'm thinking that between that and the wind, there should be some drying out. Welcome to Angry Ben's Angry Weather page, members of that page, and New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Stormwatch page, and my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And also welcome to my Google app. The folks that have the Google app for their Android devices, the app is free. It's on the on Google Play, and let me just tell you that even though you might be outside my general area, I think you'll find the app pretty useful because you can now use the Zoom radar feature on there to pretty much take your radar wherever you happen to be, and also, you can get your local weather conditions and your local area forecast. So it doesn't really matter where you are in the U.S. The app is certainly useful, and while I do focus on my local area, I also post about the general weather patterns going on across the United States pretty much on a daily basis. Plus, you can watch the live streams. If you're not on Facebook, you can watch the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which I did put on from last night. It's on the app. So just go to Google Play and download. The good news for you iPhone folks that are patiently waiting, Apple hasn't rejected it. Okay, we've gone a whole day now, and it hasn't rejected it. So I'm hoping that I'll check it later on, and it's on the App Store. If you have an iPhone, go ahead and give it a check in the App Store and see if it's there. And if it is there, let me know on the chat. So just be a little more patient. Hopefully, it'll be tonight or tomorrow. I got my fingers crossed. Okay, so we're going to do like we did last night. I think it works well. For those of you who just want to stick around for about 5 or 10 minutes, that's great. We'll focus on the current weather and take you out about 4 or 5 days, and then we'll get into all the long-range analysis. So right off the bat, the radar tonight, which is seeing improvement, still raining, though, all the way up into northern New England. This is, I think, maybe the second or third time since November where we've had snow situations that have left substantial amounts of snow for central and northern New England, to be followed by, and not too long afterward, a system that pretty much takes it to rain all the way up to Caribou and beyond. And that's what we have with this one. The back edge of this is turned over to snow, but there really wasn't enough cold air coming into this in order to make that snow even remotely significant. So that is now pulling away to the northeast, and you can see that the radar is pretty quiet as we look to the south and west. There's a little bit of activity moving through parts of Michigan tonight, a little bit of snow there, a little bit of rain shower activity. It's in South Florida. Otherwise, except for a couple of patches there, in the Rockies, it really is pretty quiet and calm. So the atmosphere beginning to take a breather, and I think for the most part we're going to see relatively quiet conditions going forward outside of the cold that is going to be a bit of an issue. Now here's the latest surface map. We'll get in closer here. Look at this warm front. Look how far north it's gotten. And those temperatures above freezing way up into Maine. This was as of 4 p.m. Caribou was 34. Okay, so there was absolutely no cold air left from that bitter cold air mass. And I said yesterday how remarkable it was that we saw temperatures that were anywhere from single digits to double digits below zero here Monday and Tuesday, only to have it just go away in a flash. And now we're headed back down. Just a lot of temperature volatility in the atmosphere, and the pattern suggests that there will be a bit more volatility, although we're not going to go back up, I think, up to what we just saw today. I mean, that was really a function of the cold front to the west and the southerly flow. Two cold fronts, actually. There's a second weather front that's moving through the Great Lakes, and that really represents the cold air. The air behind this front is colder. The air behind the second front is even colder, where we've got teens, single digits, and below zero readings as you head up through Minnesota and on up into the Dakotas and in eastern Canada. So this is going to start coming in later tomorrow afternoon into the east, and then we're going to get that cold shot. It's nothing like what we experienced earlier in the week, but it's cold enough. Temperatures will be in the teens at night. Saturday's highs probably in many areas not getting out of the 20s. And then if you look out in the west, really not a whole lot happening. This cold front, again down through the south, you've got two fronts here. You've got this leading edge of colder air where it's in the 40s and 30s, and then a secondary front that lies across southern Nebraska, northern Kansas, and behind that you've got temperatures in the teens, single digits, and below zero, and that is gradually pushing its way southward. I've been liking to use this map very much. This is the snow analysis tool from the Weather Service, and you can set it for 24, 48, or 72 hours in terms of the snowfall in the last 24, 48, or 72 hours. And you'll notice throughout New England from this system that went through last night and today, very, very little here as far as snowfall is concerned. There were some 4-inch amounts up in northern Maine, even a little pocket there of the darker blue, so that would probably wind up being about, that's 4, the darker blue. The yellow is 6 and 8, and as you have a small sliver of that in upstate New York. But really, for this time of year where you see snow certainly up, all the way up, it just shows you the extent of the warm air if it changed to rain all the way up in northern Maine. Around the Great Lakes in the last 24 hours, I think I'll just jump out, take it out to 72 so you can kind of see what the storm totals were. North and west of Chicago, through around Milwaukee, up in northern Michigan, back up through northern Minnesota, a little sliver there in the Dakotas. And the Rockies did very well this last 3 days with some big snows in western Colorado through Utah and on up through Wyoming and continuing up into Idaho and across much of northern Washington, and certainly not on the coast, but once you get into the higher terrain inland, it did quite well, and some scattered snows in the last 72 hours down through the Sierra Nevadas. But the weather in the west has actually quieted down to a large degree. So there's not a whole lot as far as watches and warnings are concerned tonight, but we probably won't see too much activity along those lines in the coming days. I just want to, what did I do with it? All right, well, you know what? We don't really need it tonight. But I want to pop up at least the WPC's 7-day rainfall forecast here. Now, some of this is starting at tonight at 7 o'clock. So there's some precip being indicated here over the next 7 days in the mid-Atlantic and into southern areas of the Northeast. And this is probably going to come with the next weather system along about Tuesday. And you can see back over through the Midwest, we've got that green. That darker green is actually between 1/4 and 1/2 an inch. So it's not a whole lot of precip here over the next 7 days. And pretty dry across the southeast into northern Florida. Fairly wet, though, across southern Florida because of a low coming out of the Gulf. That's going to bring some soaking rains to southernmost Florida over the next several days. And we've got dry weather conditions throughout much of the southern plains and back out through the southwest. So kind of a, after all the systems that we've been dealing with, we are going to get into a dry stretch, and that's because of the cold pattern that's evolving. That's going to be controlled by a northerly flow. There's no real input going to happen from the Gulf of Mexico, nor is there going to be any input coming in from the Pacific. So let's go through the short range on the GFS tonight. Here's our storm that pulls away. We're going to see a couple of weather fronts move through over the weekend here in the east. That high, that 1034 high in South Dakota, moving southward and then eastward over the next couple of days. There's not a whole lot here for you to work on in terms of precip. You're going to start to see late in the weekend lower pressures forming in the Gulf of Mexico, pretty far south. There's a weak system, another weak front coming through the northeast with some snows on Sunday. And now we're going to start to watch this low diving down into the northern plains from Canada. This is going to be the catalyst to bring down some bitter cold air that is going to be moving into the plains, into the Midwest, and eventually into the east for the middle and latter part of next week. The afternoon GFS run basically takes a primary low across southern Michigan and over Lake Erie, and it keeps it pretty strong. Now, if this is the case, this is going to be just a simple cold front that comes through with a few rain showers Tuesday morning, and that's it, and done. I'm going to explain to you a bit later. I'll show you the difference between this run and the run before it, and we'll see the differences in the two models. But ultimately, right behind it, in comes the bitter cold Arctic air. This is crazy cold that's coming down into Wisconsin and Minnesota. We're talking about double digits below zero, and not small double digits either. We're talking -20, -30, maybe even -35, and then that moves eastward. The air mass will modify a little bit, but it'll still be plenty cold when it gets into the eastern states. You're going to start to see that cold air come in Tuesday night, and then it really just, the bottom falls out on Wednesday night, Thursday. If you look carefully, there's an Arctic boundary. You see where the isobars here off the Delaware coast make this little V shape. There's a secondary Arctic front that probably comes through here on Wednesday, and then the high drops in. You'll notice that through this entire week, going back out, if you look in the west, it's pretty quiet. There's a system that comes into the northwest that drops down into the northern Rockies, but that really is about it. It's a fairly quiet week ahead, and the precipitation, what we see on the snow side, is really nothing to write home about for snow lovers. And that pretty much covers it, folks, as far as the short-range forecast is concerned. So I'm going to, now we're going to start talking about the upper air and the long-range analysis. Because I know that snow lovers at this point are probably, they're getting awfully desperate, okay? I can see from stuff on Twitter and on Facebook, we're beginning to get to the point where we're starting to grasp at any straw that is available to grasp on. So let me take you through what's going to be happening over the next week. And I want to start with, excuse me, I want to start with this map of the upper air for Friday afternoon. We have a very strong jet set up from northern Canada and two upper lows, or two vortices, one sitting in Hudson's Bay, which is actually a fairly deep vortex, and that's bringing down the shot of cold air for Friday and Saturday. But it's the one that I have up near the top of the screen. Okay, that is the vortex that's developing, and it's literally sitting over the North Pole. And that is the one that is going to be plunging southward as we go into next week, and we can watch it plunge southward on the GFS. We'll go to the North America view. I want you to get a picture here of the what the pattern looks like, what that upper air flow actually looks like. You will notice that the ridge is off the west coast. Okay, that is not necessarily a negative when it comes to getting cold. It's actually a positive to get cold air into the east, but as far as storms are concerned, you've got a problem. It's incredibly broad. If you just look at the flow, where you can ride a parcel of air from Seattle down to about El Paso, then it kind of gently moves across southern Texas, gently moves across northern Florida, and then runs out to the northeast to about 40 and 60. That is kind of like this gigantic salad bowl that is now describing the upper air flow. You don't have any definition regarding any shortwave troughs. They're very hard to find. They're weak, and in a flow like this, they stay weak. There's nothing in here that suggests that you could get anything of consequence. So you have to just kind of play the cards that you're played, and play the cards that you're dealt. And as far as snow is concerned, they're not that good outside of lake effect areas. Now watch what happens. Watch that vortex up at the top of the screen. The one in the Hudson's Bay is going to pull out. The one at the top of the screen begins to drop southward, and it strengthens considerably as it approaches northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we're getting the body of the vortex literally dropping into the U.S. In the northern Great Lakes. This doesn't happen too often. Usually it's kind of like this, where the vortex just sort of hangs around in Hudson Bay, and that pretty much is it. This one actually drops southward toward northern Lake Superior, and then swings around, and then you wait for that second one. That is the sort of the mother lode of the cold air, and that's going to swing across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. But the core of that winds up actually passing north and west of the coastline in the Northeast. It goes into upstate New York, the northwestern part of upstate New York, and into the St. Lawrence River Valley. Now, we're going to swing that around, and as that pulls up, going into late next week and into next weekend, you're left with a flow that extends up into the northwestern part of Canada. So you no longer see that almost northerly flow. It's a little more northwesterly. The ridge that's off the west coast, while this is all going on, that ridge off the west coast does break down some, and actually you start to get ridging a little more inland. So that would be a bit more conducive for something to happen if you have the right puzzle pieces coming into play. And I think a valid argument could be made that when this upper vortex pulls out, that something could try to happen in terms of storm development in the east. The GFS run late this afternoon is not really showing very much because it holds that vortex up in Labrador, and you wind up with a trough that's sort of along 70 west, and then an arm is kind of swinging around, and that just pretty much continues going forward. Now, of course, we could see this adjust and evolve over time, and I expect we will. But from the standpoint of cold or colder than normal temperatures, it looks to me, as long as this vortex holds in Hudson Bay, or some semblance of a vortex holds there in Hudson Bay, you're going to wind up with cold weather through the long-range period going out now. We're almost to February 10th here, okay? So we're really starting to march the days along. The pressures across the Arctic region remain very high, so the cold air remains very displaced. The flow from the Pacific is getting active. You're getting these systems that are kind of moving across. The flow is split again, and I think that's important in the longer term. We go to this bowling ball look here in the east, where it's cold and dry, and that's it. But we seem to gradually evolve into more of a split flow as we move through the first few days of February. So if you snow lovers have any hope, it's going to be that something like this emerges where you get a split flow, because at least this way you're going to have that Pacific jet back again like we had back in November and early December, which resulted in the southern snowstorm for the mid-Atlantic states and points southward. And also we had it when we had the second snow back a few weeks ago from Baltimore, Washington, southward. Perhaps this time around with the split, you'll have more cold air to play with as long as you maintain a strong enough flow coming down out of Canada. So it's not all hopeless. Let's put it that way. It's not all hopeless for snow lovers, but it's going to get darn right cold, and no question with this big vortex that's going to be dropping down. The temperatures, these 2-meter temperatures, they seem to be pretty consistent from run to run. Some runs a little higher, some runs a little lower. Going through the weekend, I'll just back it up. We're at this point now with that colder air that's starting to come back into the east. You can see where the whitish is all single digits. That kind of stays up over the Great Lakes and closer to the Canadian border until we get this Tuesday system to come along. And you can start to see it here if you watch how the temperatures respond to that weather system moving across the lakes and into the northeast on Tuesday. That cold air starts to drop in. So by the time we get to Tuesday night, below zero readings in Chicago, and then we got these double-digit below zero readings that last right into Friday, early Friday morning. We actually go above zero. Now, a couple of things that I've noticed, at least from this run, that the vortex coming down is coming down a bit faster on this run, so the cold air comes in a bit sooner and it goes out a bit sooner. So instead of going, say, Wednesday through Tuesday night into Friday, now it's more like coming in more along the lines of Tuesday and lasting into Thursday night, early Friday morning, which means that Wednesday in the east, we're going to start to feel the effects of the cold air. I mean, if you believe the GFS now, Wednesday, it's not getting out of the teens in New York City, and we'll be down to near zero or 0 to 5 above by Thursday morning, and then another cold night Thursday night into Friday morning, but perhaps the moderation is going to begin at this point. And there's still more cold air moving into the northern plains. You see it up here. As this first system pulls out, you got another one that's coming down. Not nearly as fierce, obviously, but if you look at the temperatures, at least through Saturday, you're seeing colder than normal temperatures. And then you get a little bit of a pop Sunday into Monday, and then another shot of cold air. Not unreasonably cold, but below average going in through much of next week. But again, it's a very dry look to it. I just would say this: I would much rather see if I were a snow lover, I would be far happier to see the fact that the GFS doesn't show a whole lot. I would look toward the next weekend, February 3rd. Let's see how this vortex pulls out. Maybe that might spur something to happen with all these chess pieces beginning to move around. Now, I want to go back one model run. The 12Z model today, the run from this morning on all the models, showed this idea for this system for Tuesday, where you get a low that moves across the lower lakes of the northern Ohio Valley, makes a run for western New York, and actually there would probably be, at least on some models, some hint of a secondary that tries to form maybe over Chesapeake Bay or perhaps in southeastern Pennsylvania, and that runs up into Maine. Now, because the cold air is rushing in faster on this particular run, you get a cold front that comes through, and that's it. Maybe a flurry on the back end, and that's it, and out. And then it just turns, very cold overnight Tuesday night into Wednesday night, and Thursday. But on the prior run, and the European showed that actually European gave us a few inches of snow, 2 to 4 inches on the backside, and the GFS actually winds up giving us a bit more. But on the run from earlier today, the low is a little weaker and moves over Lake Erie, and then part of it goes. The one low center starts to moves up there east of Lake Huron. The isobars are going to start to stretch a bit, and there's probably some kind of a wave if you follow the isobar. I don't know how well you can see it. There's 1,004 isobar, so the next one down, the 1,006 isobars. There's some spacing going on here. There's probably a little low that's on the weather front there that develops, and you get the front to come through, and there's about 6 to 8 hours of snow on the back side, and I have to tell you quite honestly, because most times when you get weather fronts like this that come through in the east, the precip just shuts off. You don't get very much on the backside of this, but the models were trying to show a slightly different upper air this time around. So to match the upper air at the point that it's snowing, what it did on the prior run was you'll notice that the upper flow here's your vortex, is encased inside that darker blue. And I'll pick the other 500 millibar map so you can see it a bit better. We'll use this one. So here's how your vortex looks. It's kind of this east-west egg-shaped flow, egg-shaped vortex. And the flow, if you notice, the upper winds along the east coast are south-southwest, and they're pretty strong. There's a pretty strong jet here that's coming around. And when we go back to the surface at this point, the cold front is just offshore, and you have north or northwest isobars here that are moving up from upstate New York and down southward. So there actually is a little bit of overrunning going on because of that strong southerly flow aloft, and that's probably what produces this back edge snow. The late afternoon run, a bit different because it cut the snow off, and I think it's because on the late afternoon run, you don't have, just for the same time frame, you've got more of a almost west-southwest wind developing here. You don't have as much of a southerly flow. The southerly flow is further to the east, so I think that's the reason why you saw that 18Z run show very little here. And that is certainly a risk. If this vortex is coming down a little bit faster, you're going to wind up probably just having a simple cold front with a few rain showers, believe it or not, on Tuesday in many areas that are along the coast at least. There might be snow further north and west, but that would really be the extent of it. It's a very frustrating proposition to say the least. So let's take a look at the parallel GFS, and I mean even the parallel GFS here actually has more of a west-southwest flow, and the parallel, there's your vortex there, gets to about Sault Ste. Marie, so it's a little. It's a little further north. I'm also noticing, by the way, on Wednesday, there's more of a west-southwest flow here, so I'm going to take a look at what the surface looks like. I'm looking at this for the first time, so I really didn't get a chance to take a look at the parallel GFS going forward. So we know what's going to happen over the weekend. By the way, that southern low that we were watching earlier this week makes the pass off the Florida coast and stays offshore, so that possible that alleyway that it has remains open. That part of the flow did not close off so that the system could come up closer to the coast like we saw some other runs do. So here's your low dropping down into northwestern Illinois on Monday afternoon, northern Indiana. You've got a high sitting up along the St. Lawrence River in Quebec. That low goes over Lake Erie. You get snow inland, rain along the coast. The low is in central New York State. And then it's off into the Gulf of Maine, and you'll notice no backside precip whatsoever on the parallel GFS. That's interesting enough. So even the parallel GFS, if it had it earlier, which I don't know if it did, took it away. Also, for those of you maybe watching across the south, if you have more of a broader west-southwest flow here, that might not be an unrealistic possibility to see some precip across northern Texas and down through Oklahoma and into Louisiana, because some of that cold air is going to push south and east. And since the core of the cold air is coming in more to the west than it is for the East Coast, it's not going to come in like the one did on Monday, which came straight down from Greenland through northeastern Canada. This is coming down, let's call it the more traditional way. So it does push that cold air pretty far south into the Gulf states. This is not unreasonable for later next week. And I'm just kind of trying to visualize here. The parallel is going to try to do something for next weekend as the vortex pulls out. And it actually does have a system here moving along, although it doesn't have much of a high up to the north. There's a lot of leftover cold air, which sometimes can be enough. And you got that icing. Again, this is just sort of preliminary guessing here as far as what the parallel GFS run is doing for the longer haul. So it kind of argues that when the cold air pulls out, when the vortex pulls out, that maybe something might try to happen next weekend. We keep pushing this back. We seem to always keep pushing opportunities back a week later, a week later, a week later. We always seem to be a week away from any weather events, and now you've got the parallel run, unlike the operational. The parallel run in the longer term, runs a low up toward the lakes and goes west to east, and you actually get rain out of it. Would be a real kick in the pants if it winds up that this is going to be another example of bitter cold air coming in, and it warms up and rains. I want to take a look at the parallel GFS's the upper air on it, if it does the same split flow idea. It kind of does. It does eventually get to that split flow. It holds on to a cold flow out of Canada. So, I suppose there's for snow lovers, it's not completely hopeless. If that split flow becomes real, then maybe we could get some systems to come along in the southern part of the split, and you take your chances as to how deep you are in the cold air and wind up seeing everything getting suppressed to the south. So this is one of those moments sometimes where you just kind of throw your hands up in the air and you begin to seriously wonder if it's ever going to snow again. And I promise you that it will eventually, but it does. You go from an active pattern to where storms are coming with no cold air. Now you're going to go into a dry pattern while you have all this bitter cold air feeding down from the north. It's not unusual. The history of the 70s, 80s, and 90s is littered with winters like this. So whoops, I keep going to the wrong map. I want to go to the GFS. So don't feel bad. This is not a first time event. It's happened before, and it'll happen again. So let's take a look at Europe and see what's going on for our folks that are watching in Europe, and particularly in England, Ireland, and Scotland. We've got a few folks that watch here on a nightly basis, and of course, the winter weather in Europe has been active and cold. It looks like a bit of a ridge builds into England and France there, but it's progressive. Weather systems are moving along, and you get the next upper low coming in this weekend that moves through England and into Western Europe, and then drops down into the Mediterranean. And here's a stronger piece that comes in around January 29th up into England, and eventually swings over into Western Europe. And yet another strong, very strong piece here toward the end of next week. So let's see how this plays out in terms of practical weather. So let me roll this back. When I say practical weather, I mean the weather on the ground. Nice little low wrapped up there in the Mediterranean, and a little bit of rain shower activity up in In England right now, here comes your next system. Strong low that moves into the North Sea. Some snow being produced up in northern England and Scotland. That drops southward, and then you get what looks like a more potent and colder system that comes in around the 28th and 9th with some snows in Ireland and England and Scotland on the west shores, and then eventually settling down into France. And then another strong low moves over just right through maybe southern Ireland and into England with some rain and snow. And you've got a cold flow there if you follow the isobars, probably coming from east of Greenland, right over northern Scotland and into Ireland. And yet another one. So it looks like a relatively stormy pattern developing here over the next couple of weeks. At times cold enough for snow, not so much at other times. Even some freezing precip here being shown as we go late in the forecast period. For my friends in eastern Canada, when it rains all the way up to Caribou, you've got to figure that it's going to rain all the way up, and it did. You've got the low in moving northeastward west of Nova Scotia, so you're getting rain tonight through the overnight. Then it pulls away by tomorrow morning, changes over to all rain in Newfoundland as the low winds up in Labrador, and then that pulls out. Looks pretty dry here through Sunday. Start to get maybe a little bit of snow shower activity, but most of it goes to the west in Quebec. And on Monday, it's actually raining over Nova Scotia, and low pressure develops. Looks like the model's producing some snows in interior parts of Newfoundland. We're at Tuesday, Wednesday, so we're starting to get the cold air coming into the east. Another rain event for Nova Scotia, changes to snow on the tail end, and then you're into that cold air. I mean, it doesn't look like anything exceptional. You certainly aren't seeing any Atlantic storms coming up. One big problem right now is a complete lack of blocking, by the way. It's just not there. You have a negative NAO, but the NAO is in completely the wrong place, and it's not represented by a blocking high. It's really just a strong ridge out in the Atlantic that's built up along 40 North and goes all the way up to Greenland. So that really isn't too good when it comes to snowstorm activity in the eastern part of the United States. You need that NAO. Remember, the NAO covers a very large geographic area in the Atlantic, so you really want the blocking high sitting up to the north at over Greenland and pushing into northeastern Canada, and the jet stream suppressed down to 40 north, where you've got a low sitting out at 50 north, 50 west. That is more conducive, and we obviously do not have any indication that that's where we're going with the upper pattern. So I'm keeping an eye on the chat here. So it's nice to see the regular crowd. Usually on a day where a storm is either going on or winding down, everybody's kind of sort of anticlimactic. So they're taking a breather. So slightly smaller crowd tonight than we have seen on other nights. So just coming over to the chat board here. 0 to -4 right near New York City on the parallel for the 31st. It's colder than the operational. One of the things that we've got to look at when it comes to how cold it's actually going to get is going to be the wind direction. The wind direction is key because if the wind is westerly, that's going to tend to keep temperatures up higher up east of the Appalachians. If the wind, because it's a downsloping wind, if the wind is more northwesterly, that'll bring in some of the colder air. Also, we'll have to look at clouds. If there's clouds, that will also help to hold temperatures higher. It's different from what happened on Monday because of the fact that the air coming down from the northeast and down the Hudson Valley doesn't have the downslope warming that would occur when these air masses come in from the west. So that makes it difficult for temperatures to go below zero with systems with highs coming down from the northern plains, unless you were to get that whole vortex to kind of drop southeastward, say into upstate New York or into northwestern Pennsylvania. I mean, if it were to come that far south, then you're really bringing down the core of that air down. That minus 20 air would get down pretty far to the south. That's when you start to see below zero readings making it down to Virginia and Maryland and in through eastern Pennsylvania, and those opportunities where New York City has gotten below zero, you would need to see that. So short range problem. The GFS, by the way, I would just caution everybody, a lot of the numerical model products that are produced with the GFS, the temperatures have just been god-awful. They've been, at times, 7 to 10 degrees too warm. Most days they seem to be averaging about 3 to 5 degrees too warm. And that's been a fairly consistent error that's been running for the last month or two. And I don't see any sign of that breaking down anytime soon. Izzy 11-12 was an El Nino year, so it was a bit different. But I have said that there's nothing that says that you can't have a cold, dry winter. And when you have a bowling ball 500 millibar look, when the jet stream looks like a giant bowling ball has dropped into the eastern part of the United States, that's what you have. Unusually cold, but you also wind up having it unusually dry. Anthony Scott Burler pointing out New York City hasn't been below zero since Valentine's Day 2016. Below zero temperatures in New York City are actually a rare occurrence. They don't happen very often. Maybe every 10 or 20 years you get a below zero morning. So you got to have it under the right conditions. And if you go back in the past, there were back through the 30s and back into the late 1800s, there were more opportunities where temperatures did get below zero from these cold air masses coming down. In recent years, it took a bit of a break. I forgot before 2016 when the last below zero reading was, but it did happen 2 years ago. I happened to have been, by the way, on that particular morning. That was in the 15-16 El Nino year, and you had that brief interruption, a strong shot of bitter cold air that just basically came in and then went out. I was up in central New Hampshire at Lake Winnipesaukee that weekend, and that morning it was 15 degrees below zero, and there was a screaming wind of 20 to 30 miles an hour, so the wind chills were running at about minus 30, minus 40. Let me tell you something. I don't care what anybody says. If the temperature is in the teens and the wind chills are making it feel like minus 10 or minus 15, you haven't lived until you've experienced minus 15, okay? And the folks who come from the cold country will tell you it gets hard to breathe when the temperature gets that low. Everything freezes, and it hurt to be outside. I mean, it really, really hurt to be outside. So that's why I kind of get with the wind chill. I get annoyed sometimes when I watch. When I occasionally watch folks on the TV folks, and they make wind chill front and center above the temperature, and I don't agree with that. I think temperature is the scientific value that we look at. We're measuring a value, an absolute value, whereas wind chill is kind of taking those absolute values and making a construct out of it. And to me, that's secondary. And also, it goes to the general nature of trying to take everything to its natural apocalyptic conclusion. I guess it's not dramatic enough to say the temperature is 5. You have to tell everybody that it feels like minus 15. And I'm not saying that wind chill doesn't matter. It does matter. Wind does make a huge difference. There's a huge difference between being outside when it's 0 with no wind and being outside when it's 0 with a 15-mile-an-hour wind. It hurts a lot more to be outside with the 15-mile-an-hour wind than it does for just plain 0 with the radiational cooling and a dead calm wind. I think we would prefer it that way than the other way. So just to wrap it up, Cold and dry, cold and dry. I'm not holding up much hope with regards to Tuesday night into Wednesday. I'm not saying that the late afternoon model run is correct, but in view of the fact that this winter has been the way it's been, and that there's this snow hole that exists from west of Boston down to north and west of New York City to about somewhere between Philadelphia and Baltimore, that has seen hardly any snow at all. And of course, there are pockets in there, like South Jersey has had snow, Delaware has had snow. I get that, but because of this kind of snow drought, we seem to be in a winter where getting it to snow is a very, very hard thing to do in some areas, and that's going to be the case. Let's also not forget that it has been an ample snow season for central and upstate New York, for central and northern New England. They're getting a typical winter. Maybe it's not raging above normal, but it's not very far from normal, and that's okay. They have also seen snows across the Great Lakes into the Central Plains. The Northern Ohio Valley has gotten involved lately. We've seen, of course, the snows that have happened in the Mid-Atlantic states with two relatively sizable snow events, which you can go some winters where you don't get anything of size or consequence in the Mid-Atlantic states. So from that standpoint, it's it depends on how you look at it. And every winter there's going to be one spot that's a zero zone, and for now it's in the spot that I happen to be sitting in. Okay, which makes it easy for me to drive to and from work, and it doesn't give me a whole lot of snowstorm work on the weekends, which is kind of good because I get to stay home and don't have to come into work. But I would like to see a snow event, if only from the standpoint of just seeing one. I'm a snow lover. I admit it. There's a bit of snow weenie in me. I admit that. So. All right, so let's wrap it up now, and let's just really fast. Let me remind you that for those of you who are truly weather enthusiasts, join my ever-expanding platform on Patreon, and I will put the link up on the chat board. It's really working out well. I think a lot of the members on there have expressed satisfaction with how things have turned out. We have posts just for Patreon members. They don't appear on my website. We have live streams just for Patreon members. We usually have that live stream every morning at about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Sometimes I have it a little bit later, so we have the model runs coming in, and we can take a look at that when it's relevant. You can message me at any time, and I usually respond or try to respond in a timely fashion. It's just $2 a month, and it goes a long way to support what I'm doing on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and my 3 websites. So do consider it. Again, great way to support my channel. Also, once again, a reminder, if you've got my Android app on Google Play, update it. We issued an update yesterday. I've talked to a few people who said that they've gotten the updates automatically, but in case you haven't, be sure and go and get the update. And again, the app is now, with the updates that we've done, useful for any area outside of my area. You can get your local forecast, you can get your local temperatures, you can use the Zoom radar for your geographic zone, and there's a lot of little tools in that Zoom radar. It's a very, very cool product that is part of it. So do download it. Mirtha Gunter, Charlene Myers, nice to see you both on tonight. Michael Dunn, good to see you. If you came on late, I did the weather for Europe on here. Every night. I have it in order now. We're going to do that. We're going to do short range, spend about 5-10 minutes on that. Then we're going to do long range. Then we'll do Europe, and then we'll do Canada. And this way, if you can stay around for the whole stream, fine. If not, totally understand. I get a kick out of the fact that some of you could sit through a whole hour of this. I think that's great. Christopher, while you're you got your phone in front of you, go into the App Store and put my name in there and see if anything comes up. Because I didn't get a rejection today. Usually when they reject you within a couple of hours, and they've had it since 3:30 this morning, and I haven't heard anything with regards to a rejection. So let me know if you see it there. So that this way I can put the link up for everybody on Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. Tonight at 9:25, the nightly Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook. So be sure to tune in for that. If you're not on Facebook, no worries. I put last night's show is in my YouTube library, and we'll put tonight's show in the YouTube library. I usually do it in the morning, first thing in the morning. I load it up. If I put it in at midnight, that depends on how soon I get home when I get out of work. And sometimes I'm just too tired, so I just do it in the morning. I think that's a whole lot easier. Plus most people, most of you are asleep, so at least you'll find it there in the morning when you're awake. Okay, have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you tomorrow night right here at. It's a Friday night, so let's possibly. I think I might hit for 6 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow, but just watch when I put the time up. But Fridays I like to usually do it an hour earlier at 6. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.